Greetings and a warm welcome from me, astrologer Patrick Arundell. Today, in the latest of my deep dive videos, I'm going to explore the journey of the svelte Venus through the earthy but also influential sign of Capricorn. This begins on January the 23rd at 8:51 AM Universal Central Time and goes on through to February the 16th. Now, Venus has been making her way through the sign of Sagittarius since the 29th of December, but it immediately was conflicted by the ruler of the sign of Capricorn, Saturn, and then later on in its passage over the last week, it's come into contact with the dreamy, drifting, swirling, misty vibe of Neptune. But such is the synchronicity in astrology, as the Sun and Pluto have waved au revoir to the sign of Capricorn, so Venus eases in to replace them. But it's not just Venus in the sign of Capricorn, we also have Mercury and Mars. So three personal planets in the sign of culmination. Capricorn's very much about where we see our material world shaping up, and Venus can be about money as much as relationships. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to share with you the archetypes of Venus through its rulership of Taurus and Libra and what we can expect through Capricorn. Also, I'm going to share with you the upcoming aspects. There's some really exciting ones that we can look forward to. But what does the event chart tell us? There's a semi-sextile to Pluto that I need to share with you. And then I'm going to go through each of the 12 signs from Aries through to Pisces to give you a flavour of what you can expect. You can view these in terms of your sun or your ascendant. Now, if you're new to my channel, thank you so much for joining us. This is very much a community. Please share any thoughts you have. I try to interact with each comment. If you're a returning visitor, your views, comments, likes and subscriptions are truly appreciated. Now, it's also important to understand not just the fact that Venus is making its way through the sign of Capricorn, but what house that is in your natal chart. If you've yet to discover that information, you can take advantage of my special offer and purchase your life roadmap, your character analysis. This is your personal blueprint, totally unique to you, based on your personal birth data. And in my special package, you can get your 12-month forecast and also your free Zodiac, Love, Indian and Chinese Zodiac forecast for all signs for the next 12 months. Please see the link below. So Venus makes her way into the sign of Capricorn on the 23rd of January. Through the sign of Taurus, very much about self-worth, our values, everyday money, our appreciation and sensuality, and also the good things in life, particularly good food and good wine. Libra is much more about how we relate. It's our attitude to partnerships, harmony, diplomacy, can be to do with fashion, presentation, and in some cases, even superficiality. Now, the sign of Capricorn, as I mentioned, is very much to do with the more substantial worldly interaction we have in our relationships. So our professional relationships do likely come to the fore over the next few weeks. But if there has been some difficulties around relationships through the squaring up of Venus in Sagittarius to Saturn and then Neptune, perhaps one of the issues was trying to get to the bottom of where people were coming from, because Venus in Sagittarius is a truth seeker, but also will go for independence if something isn't working. So if there have been mixed messages, I think collectively what we're all wanting now, whether it's from our line manager, the people we're contracted to, or perhaps within our own business, we want a bit more certainty about our interactions. Now, if you are in a relationship which is going well, but it's a developing relationship. This can be a time when you're thinking about taking it to that next level of commitment. That could be moving in, it could be getting spliced, it could be renting or buying a property together. Very Capricornian. If you have Venus in Capricorn in your natal chart, it depends on what house it's in, and also if there are other planetary aspects to it, such as Saturn, the ruler of Capricorn. But you could be, or certainly were when you were younger, a tad shy or reserved in the way that you related to people. Don't be surprised also if over the next few weeks that if you're single and you'd like to meet someone, it is through your work or through a professional situation, or it could be someone from a completely different age group to you. I'm sharing on the screen now with you the event chart based on a solar perspective, with the ascendant on the vernal point at 0 degrees. That puts Venus in the 10th house along with Mercury and Mars. But you can see the angle to Pluto is exact. That's a semi-sextile. With Pluto having just moved into Aquarius, that itself is very much about trying to find a higher purpose. But I feel it's rather ironic that Venus has moved into Capricorn, just reminding us that Capricorn energies do have some real benefits, particularly to do with the things that provide continuity and security and stability in our lives. It's not all about future forward stuff that comes through Pluto in Aquarius. But when Venus and Pluto are aligned, it gives us a much greater desire to have meaningful relationships with other people. In a professional context, I think we want to know where we're heading. So if you do have a discussion over the next few weeks with a boss or someone who works for you, creating that clarity is going to be important. Now, in a couple of days, Venus moves into the start of a sextile with Saturn within 3 degrees, and that becomes exact on the 28th. So we have the ruler of Capricorn forging a very enabling link to Venus. So I think that helps us to express ourselves with sincerity. What we mean is what we say. But one of the luckiest aspects possible in astrology occurs on the 29th, the next day, when we have an exact trine between the two planets of fortune, Venus the lesser and Jupiter the greater benefics. And that builds up from the 26th to the 31st of January. So that provides us really exciting opportunities, because both in earth signs are asking us to achieve tangible results. So it could be a flutter, it could be moving our resources around skillfully to squeeze a bit more from them. It could be that we're actually going to have some kind of serendipity bless our situation. On the 7th of February, we have an exact trine with Uranus, like Jupiter, in the sign of Taurus. And of course, by this time in forward motion, it ends its retrograde on the 27th of January. And that builds up from the 5th to the 10th of February. If your relationship is a little bit stodgy and predictable, Venus in Capricorn obviously makes us mindful of what we have, particularly in the material sense. But Uranus in its full in Taurus is probably provoking us a little bit to shake things up, even if it creates a little bit of an edge. So if you're safely solo and on the whole pretty happy with it, this could give you a little bit of a desire to do something a little bit more wild and in the moment. But if you are in that long-term relationship and it has become a little bit too predictable and a little bit too cozy, you may find yourself wanting to do something more spontaneous. Now, on Valentine's Day, we actually have Mars having moved into the sign of Aquarius and is in a conjunction with the potent energies of Pluto. If you recall, these two were in a square when the latest outbreak of violence started in Israel. How will that play out in terms of Aquarius? Well, I think it's reminding us all that friendship is important in relationships, but it also could of course be a bit detached. But what Venus brings to the party is a beautiful sextile to Neptune. If you do go out with someone that you really, really like for the first time and you really hit it off, this is quite a magical planetary aspect to have when you meet someone. Just from a little bit of personal experience, when I met my wife on the first day, Venus and Neptune were in a trine. Neptune in Pisces and Venus in Cancer. So that was lovely for us. But that's exact on the 13th, but it does build up from the 11th through to the 16th. If you are a creative person and you're drawn towards pottery or perhaps painting, this would be a great time to showcase your work or to seek out more distribution or raising the profile of the talents you have. If you want to take someone on an imaginative date for Valentine's Day, those kind of places would be a good place to head to. Gives you a flavour of Venus in Capricorn, where it's urging us to be a little bit more steady Eddie than through its journey through Sagittarius, where I feel because of those squares to Saturn and Neptune, maybe some old stuff came up or some unresolved stuff, or maybe a little bit of insecurity, or the need for freedom was competing with the need to be really all in. But if you've worked all that out, this transition of Venus into Capricorn will be hugely an asset. But if you are single and you'd like to meet someone, look out for those professional interactions, or it could be at work that you could see some significant developments on people you're connecting to in terms of your professional development. Now I'm going to go through each of the 12 signs from Aries through to Pisces to give you a flavour of what you can expect. Now Aries, for you, Venus moving into your 10th house is really interesting because your ruler Mars is in that location already. And Mars is going to be forging a really strident link to Uranus in your 2nd house. And that peaks on the 29th of January. Now that's much more about risk. So if there is someone you like and you really want to achieve that connection with them, it does point towards you taking the initiative. Whereas Venus in Capricorn does, perhaps in another way, point towards you playing it a little more safe. But if there is someone that you like and they're not really taking the bait in terms of the non-verbal communication that you're emanating, perhaps you do have to go for it. But in an existing relationship, you and yours could be talking about some redecoration, or in some way changing where you live, or moving to somewhere that's more desirable in terms of the environment, which Venus also influences. So Taurus, for you, Venus moving into Capricorn is very much about your higher truth. So the collective energy of Venus through Sagittarius for you works out in Capricorn. But you can see there's some terrific stuff that's set to unfold with both Jupiter and Uranus in your sign. So they're urging you to really show who you are as an individual. The 9th house is asking you to widen your horizons, travel, connect with people from different cultures and backgrounds. If you are going on a holiday over the next few weeks, it could turn out to be really exciting, and you could encounter someone who truly makes your pulse race. In an ongoing tie, which is all good and dandy, maybe you do together need to do some things that are a little bit more spontaneous and off the cuff. The link with Saturn that becomes exact on the 28th is a way that you can have the best of both worlds in a sense, because Saturn's in the part of your situation to do with your friendships, but also you can celebrate the things you have in common. But I feel that breaking away from your normal regular routines will be a fantastic way to provide a bit more spark. And spark is something that is important in relationships, however we get on. We're dealing with the financial side of things, childcare, if you have that, the domestic load. There still needs to be that little bit of excitement from time to time. And because Venus is your ruler, here in the sign of Capricorn, interestingly, even though Capricorn is ruled by Saturn, and that's very much about being more steady, it's pushing you really to be a bit more provocative in your approach. Gemini, for you, this is a fascinating development because the 8th house is about intimacy. Technically, Venus in the 8th house is detrimented, very scorpionic. If you're someone who does find it a little bit difficult to give away your personal independence. Certainly, I feel that there have been opportunities with Venus going through Sagittarius to have a lot of dialogue, and perhaps you've been flirting with someone, or perhaps there's been some uncertainty in an existing relationship, possibly to do with someone's interference or professional demands coming from Saturn initially and then Neptune. Perhaps your work is more important to you than being in a full-time relationship at the moment. But Venus moving into the 8th house asks you a big question. How much do you want to be close to someone? Even if you're not in a relationship at the moment, you can still ask yourself that question, because what we can do with transits is actually keep working with them, whatever our circumstances, to keep evolving and keep developing in terms of our personal understanding. So that can be interesting. The other side of Venus in the 8th house is long-term money. And I think there are big opportunities for you to use past skills, experiences and knowledge, but in some kind of new and fresh way to extract a little bit more income from your situation. Could be an idea or a hobby that you've had that you haven't totally focused on, could become more important to you over the next 3 or 4 weeks. So Cancer, Venus moving into your 7th house, which for you the sign of Capricorn is, can be really delicious. This has a much more Libran emphasis to it. It's where you can lean into other people's situations with a degree of grace, charm and diplomacy. What the 7th house can want with Venus is to keep things on an even keel. It's wanting to avoid confrontation. Ironically, with Mars also in the 7th house, that's much more thrusting and can be quite complex. That can see us being much more demanding of getting what we need around our relationships. But Mercury's there as well, suggesting an exchange of views, and can be more detached, and therefore we can take things less personally. But what the combination of Mars and Venus does here is Mars, if you like, is the iron fist, and Venus is the velvet glove. So a lovely combination. And whereas Pluto was very much about transformations in lots of ways over the last 16 years, Venus can help you to reap the premium of all the knowledge and the experiences that you've gained. But there could be someone who is about to come into your situation. It doesn't have to be uniquely romantic. It could be some kind of partnership, collaboration, in a way which is mutually beneficial to each party. So Venus in the sign of Capricorn for you personally is really something to savour. So Leo, for you, Venus moves into the pragmatic 6th house. Now you've had Pluto there for a long time. That's what I mean about the irony. So in comes Venus to replace Pluto. Venus in the 6th house can be quite sacrificing. In the technical sense, it's in its full, because when it's in Virgo, it's not at its best. It's a bit cooler. It's not very pash, but you do have the Sun and Pluto in the pash, 7th house of your situation. Perhaps what you're looking for is a fairer division of household chores in an existing tie, particularly if you have been more self-sacrificing in the past. On the other hand, those little acts of thoughtfulness, those gestures that can be practical, like making a partner a cup of coffee, or doing a chore that maybe they ordinarily do, can be something that actually gives them a lot of appreciation of what you do. Now the 6th house is also about work, and if there is someone that you're connecting well with, perhaps around a business idea, or perhaps it's a colleague that you just really like, just take your time and build up. Just little pieces of information shared can build that rapport between you. Virgo, Venus moving into Capricorn is all about play. You have Mercury here as well, which can be very cheeky in the 5th house. Loves a good joke and being flirtatious. And Mars is about raw sex appeal. You've got it all. What's not to like? Okay, the Sun and Pluto may be in the more pragmatic 6th house, but you are a 6th house person. That's what you're about. They're just really giving you a bit of a sounding board to see where you are in terms of, are you enjoying your work? Are or is your penchant for keeping everything very organised actually killing your passion in some way? I think this collection of energy in Capricorn is telling you to have some fun. It just wouldn't be a surprise if you did meet up or go for a day out or an evening out with some folks you work with. Or you could get chatting to someone in a very, very ordinary situation. It may be waiting to get a coffee, get on a bus, at that supermarket queue. I know they're old cliches, but you could find that just a joke could suddenly just provide a little bit of connection and spark. And if we don't sometimes be a little bit more risk-taking, and the fifth house is about speculation, then we're not necessarily going to meet someone if that's what you want. So a little bit more dare is suggested for you, Virgo, particularly with Uranus in that very fine angle to Venus, which is exact on February the 7th, but builds up from the 5th and through to the 10th of February. Hello, Libra. So how incredibly synchronistic is it that your ruler replaces the nasty Pluto just a couple of days after Pluto's moved on? And it's a test in a way, if you think about it, because Pluto's been pushing you to get much clearer about your emotional needs, but what you will give and where you need to be a little bit more defended. So Venus comes along, and Venus in the fourth house could give you the push to do something decorative, to think about some new furnishings. That's very classic Venus in the fourth house. Maybe invite someone around and cook them a nice meal. That's also a good way to get to know someone that you like. But in another way, it's possible that you're being just tested a little more about how well you've evolved with Pluto's help. Because you are a people pleaser, it is hard to say no. The key is knowing when to say yes to the right person and no to the wrong person. So that is the challenge for you. You do have Mars here to give you some support, so that's a bit feistier. But I think if you are in an existing relationship, where you live and how you live there could be part of the equation. You're certainly becoming more aware of your emotional needs. With the Sun and Pluto in the fifth now, you want to showcase your pleasures, your talents, and that's all good, but it has to feel right too. So Scorpio, for you, what a killer package you have when it comes to flirting. With Venus, Mercury and Mars all in your third house, you have it all. Mars, of course, being your ruler. So with Mars also soon to arc over to Uranus, are you in the mood to be a little more daring or even provocative? But that's if you're, of course, in the so-called market to connect with someone. If you're in an ongoing relationship, it is the dialogue you have, the stimulation that goes between you that can be really enlivening. You may find that your partner seems more attuned to how you express yourself. If you do meet someone new, it could be the sound of your voice as much as the ideas you have or your personality power alone, that they could be absolutely swooning over. And a lot of this potential comes because your seventh house, how you relate, is linking so well to the third house, the message. The key, though, with the third house is to make sure that what we say is really what we mean. But because Saturn is in your fifth house of romance and Venus links perfectly there in a few days' time, well, the stage is set fair for you. So if you're wanting to up your interaction with others, despite the fact that your modern ruler has moved into a more emotional area, there's still plenty of sparkle around you at this present time, Scorpio. Sagittarius, Venus moves into your second house. I can't emphasize enough how fortunate this can be for your finances, but particularly if you've really been slogging away for years with Pluto going through your second house. Been a lot of transformations, a lot of changes. Perhaps you haven't quite seen the rewards that you feel you're due. The next 4 weeks or so gives you an opportunity to really manifest something. But because Uranus and Jupiter, your ruler, in your sixth house, it may be that you have to offer something to get something back. That could be through a job role that you go for, which is to do with the service sector. It may be that in a more social context, you can enjoy good food and good wine. If you're someone who is quite the dab hand when it comes to cooking, that could be an area that you can gain an enormous amount of enjoyment for. If you have set your intentions on working on your diet as you've come into 2024, that could be tested somewhat over the next few weeks, especially if you're someone who's naturally got quite the sweet tooth. But in an existing relationship, sensuality and intimacy, the second house, and of course Venus going through your sign has emphasised your allure, and perhaps there have been some different admirers just aware of you. The second house suggests you want to pause a little bit, weigh it all up. It's more about what could become something more long-standing, even for a free spirit like you. Capricorn, Venus moving into your sign is really welcome, particularly if you have felt a little bit uncertain around relationships in general. It's not necessarily been that there's anything tangible that's happened, it's more been a sense that perhaps things have not been quite as you would like. Maybe it's aroused some insecurities. Possibly a relationship has come to an end. But this can be a new beginning for you. You're certainly going to emanate some sparkling vibrancy over the next few weeks. This is like the start of year 2024, part 2 for you, with Mercury and Mars in your sign. For sure, the Sun and Pluto have moved into your second house, but I feel this is going to be very revitalizing. A great time to give your personal appearance a bit of a makeover. If you're going to hit those sales, something a little different or lush or groovy even could be something that really appeals to you. But this is a chance for you to get much more in touch with your identity. The first house is all about our identity. It's like the ascendant, if you like. It's about your body. You may consider perhaps a haircut. Those kind of changes can all give you extra confidence and an extra sense of your value, Venus, and allure, Venus, and desirability, Venus, particularly with Mars in the mix. So Aquarius, so much emphasis on the Sun and Pluto moving into your sign. Venus moving into the 12th house is really interesting. You've learned so much about who's for you and who's not for you, but also how they haven't necessarily come out and said it in a tangible way, which, as an Aquarius, you'd prefer people to be frank with you. And that's over the last 15 or 16 years, a long time. So if you experience, until Venus moves into your sign, a little bit of uncertainty about certain involvements, your parameters of what is acceptable to you or not are much clearer in your mind. Your terms of reference, you have the innate understanding of what's really important, particularly in terms of loyalty, faithfulness, people who understand your sensitivities, your need for a bit of space sometimes. Yes, you can be very social, but also you need to retreat and recuperate, and that need for solitude is important to you as much as that need to be very friendly and network. So if you do find yourself turning down a few invitations over the next few weeks, that's absolutely fine. But if you do find yourself thinking about whether an existing relationship isn't quite as you want, take that time to really let your emotions percolate through you. If you find yourself being nostalgic or thinking about someone from your past, that wouldn't be a surprise either. It doesn't necessarily follow that they're right to come back into your life now, but remember, that's your decision. It's nothing to do with the planet. The planets are just provoking the possibility within you. You have the final arbitrary decision. So Pisces, Venus moves into the friendliest, most social part of your situation, just as the Sun and Pluto have dived deep. What a contrast, what a dichotomy. But the fact is that Venus, Mercury and Mars all in your 11th house is about as lively as it gets. But I guess what the Sun and Pluto are going to show you is that You can have those connections to people at a certain level, and it may be a good level, but what you're looking for is a level that's meaningful. So it's not just about having meetups and a giggle and good fun, although all of those are possible. If you're more into personal development, what the Sun and Pluto are saying is you want those things, but with added depth and sincerity. If it is some time since you've heard from someone who was important to you, and it could be a friend in the past, there could be some kind of meeting up or reconnection over the next few weeks, which will actually really delight you. Particularly if both of you have been working away in your lives and gained much greater insights and understanding to who you are. And that can be something to really celebrate. If you're in a long-term relationship, it's all about whether you see it as being one that is still for the future. If you are single, it may be that someone in your network is going to take on a much greater allure to you over the next 4 weeks. And it may be for some Pisces people that you could start that introduction into that new involvement in a very low-key, even discreet, confidential, even clandestine way. It's been a real pleasure sharing Venus in Capricorn with you. Thank you so much for joining me. All the best, and really grateful for any likes, comments, shares or subscriptions.